Glad you're watching The Perspective today. As you probably know, I'm Mike Sherbino, but I want to welcome you back as we continue with our Summer Encore series. And this week is no exception. Got some great friends, people that are coming to share their strengths, their experiences of a God who has impacted them in the way that they do life. And He wants to meet you, that same God, today as well. You know, all week, we're sharing a verse of scripture, and the promise for this week is found in Hebrews 4, verse 16. It says this: let's with confidence draw near to God's throne of grace to receive grace and mercy to help us in our time of need. Isn't that encouraging to know that God doesn't want us to feel that we've been left alone? He wants you to know that He is there with you, and He'll not fail you or forsake you. As you enjoy the program today, be reminded of the truth that if God is for us, who can be against us? We got JT Harding with us today. And Mitch, you should just be lit up with this one because he's a rock star.
Mike, I'm excited. And I was even thinking last night, man, what kind of guitar questions can I ask him about? How much of that is for TV and how much of that is for after? I'm thinking
But let me ask you a question about guitars, okay? You're getting married pretty soon. Like, how many guitars do you have?
I've got 10 at the moment.
You got 10.
That's right.
Mitch, you got to get a better car. You can't keep buying guitars. Okay, you got to take care of that little lady that you're marrying.
Well, Mike, I've got one little lady. Of course, that's my fiance, but I've got all these other little ladies too, and they need attention. I think of Maria, I think of Lindsay, I think of Sarah. These are all real names for my guitars, and I got to take care of them somehow.
Yeah, you need to clarify. Those are names for your guitars.
For my guitars, that's
okay.
right.
Well, hey, you know what? Let's talk to a real rock star.
Yep.
And we got JT Harding with us today. JT, thank you for joining us here on The Perspective.
Hello. I didn't know this was the Mormon perspective. Oh my gosh, this guy has 10 girlfriends. You know what I love about Mitch? A lot of people don't realize about Mitch. He was actually going to get engaged to another girl, and she said, "No more guitars. Choose me or the guitars." And he said, "I'm going to miss you."
I'll find someone else.
You know, not adjust your televisions. I'm really dressed like this. All right. Good morning. The Perspective, Mike and Mitch. What's happening? I had to stay up all night to get up this early, but let me just greet the incredible country of Canada with this.
All I want to know is this, okay, JT, before we get into the serious stuff. Okay, now we're doing the McKenzie brothers. I get it, okay? And we could have worn flannel. We changed just before we came in. We were trying to be a little more mature. And unfortunately, you're not. I just want to know, as a rock star, first question, can you do the splits? I want to know that.
Oh, that's a great question, Mike. I can't, but as a kid growing up in Detroit, Michigan, which a lot of people say, is actually Canada. I'm from South Detroit. I would jump off the drum riser and do the splits. I was always the lead singer of the band, true, because I can't really play guitar very well, and I can't play drums or piano, but I knew how to pose and pout and get the audience going.
You're the front man. That's good.
You're the front man. And okay. The next question is this. How come I have to wear such a boring jacket and rock stars, I mean, they just get to live the dream? What's that all about? And did you tackle a leopard to get that thing or what?
No. Oh, wow. I like it. This guy's fire. No, man, I raided Don Cherry's closet before I came on. Thank you. Yeah. By the way, I was talking to Jeff, your great producer, and he loves music. He said, I was in a boy band in Toronto. I said, I think I've heard of you. He said, really? I said, yeah, New Kids on the Ice Skates. Thank you. Well, it's great to be here. And I have a huge connection with Canada. Growing up in Detroit, all the music would come over. Bryan Adams. I literally would study Bryan Adams songs. I don't know how to read music, but I would kind of, when other kids were dissecting, grasshoppers, I was dissecting Bryan Adams songs. And that's not a joke. And it's made all the difference in my hit writing. But great to be here.
Well, you know what? And God has allowed you to have an amazing career. You've written a book called Party Like a Rock Star. Tell us about that and what was the motivation for writing that book?
Yeah, thank you. So I didn't know anybody in the music business. I just loved watching MTV. I was adopted. I always say I was truly, I say it in the book, I was taken by the hand of God and given to my family, the Hardings. And I grew up in Detroit. My family loves sports. And, I had big hair. I'm hairspraying my hair. I'm jumping around with a hockey stick for a guitar. That's true. And everyone asked me for advice. How do you become a hit songwriter? I didn't know anyone in the music business, but I made it happen. And that's why I wrote the book. And I've written number ones for Blake Shelton, Keith Urban, Different for Girls, which was a 6-week number one for Dierks Bentley in Canada. I wrote a song called Smile with Uncle Kracker. And that's what the book's about. And I was up against a lot of, adversity. Thanks to the music business, my heart has been broken more than the ice cream machine at McDonald's in Toronto. But I kept going. I kept having faith, and that's what the book's about. Party like a rock. It's a roller coaster ride, baby.
Well, JT, tell me more about that, because I've always heard that the music industry, it's tough, it's unforgiving, it's often, very often, very hard to break into. But you just said that the music industry actually helped you and was something for you to hang on to. So just tell us about your relationship with the music industry.
Oh, thank you. Well, the music industry, listen, if it was easy, everybody would do it, but it's very hard to break into. But it was just something, I guess I don't say this a lot, but I'll just say, I think it was my calling, and I was given the gift of being able to figure out how to write songs, even in a simple way. So I looked down the back of all my CDs, and they all said California. So after high school, I beelined to California. I didn't have the internet then, so you couldn't just look up record companies. Also, for your youngsters, I didn't have Instagram. So to show off my clothes, I had to walk to the pencil sharpener twice a class in high school to show off my outfit. So I didn't have the internet. I had a demo tape, but you couldn't just call a record company. The phone numbers aren't in there. And the gates of the record company seemed as big as the Jurassic Park gates. You couldn't get in. But here's what I did. I knew a girl whose roommate worked at FedEx. So I borrowed the FedEx jacket, and like Obi-Wan Kenobi, tap dancing into the Death Star, I passed every security guard, every promotion guy chewing on a golf tee, and I sauntered into every record company and put my demo CD in every mailbox. And I just did whatever it took, and it finally happened, but it was a long road.
Wait, so let me ask you a little bit more about that. I'm thinking that's a really cool story, by the way, just doing what you got to do. You got to steal a FedEx costume, you do it. But you got into the music industry. And now I'm thinking about this, just your journey growing up in Detroit, breaking into the music industry. Tell us, what role do you believe that God played through your journey?
If you had asked me years ago, I would say, why is this happening like this? Why do I hit all these roadblocks? But here I am, maybe on the other side of it. And I feel like, he was just teaching me how to write better songs and how to become a better person and how to treat people with respect and try and not always think about myself and being in the limelight. Ever since I was a kid, when I open the refrigerator, the light comes on, I start singing and do 5 minutes of stand up. So that's what I think, and it's all in my book, but I love sharing the stories. I had 2 record deals, lost them both. Real record deals, big money, limousines. I made an album with John Mellencamp's band. The records never came out. I don't know why. Then the band Linkin Park, I got a job working for them because I wanted to stay in the music business any way I could. They started letting me open up for them. And I got to tell you, man, if you ever get a chance to stand on stage and hear 30,000 people screaming, "You suck, you suck," it's a magical moment. It gives you a chill. I get booed off stage opening for Linkin Park. Anything not tied down was being thrown at me, and a quarter hit me and actually split my head open. The picture is in the book. Check this out. The next day in the newspaper, there's a giant review of Linkin Park and a huge picture of the lead singer, Chester Bennington, and I. His arm is around me. I'm bleeding from the head. This is all true. And at the end of the review, it said, the opening act was a one-man band. Despite bleeding from the head, he finished a 2-song promising set. Somebody saw that review. They found one of my old forgotten CDs. They called someone in Nashville and said, "You got to sign this guy." So all I've had is roadblocks, twists and turns. It's kind of like that Rascal Flatts songs that I didn't write. God bless the broken road that led me to you. So I think God just taught me to persevere. I know it's a long answer, but boy, is it a good story.
Well, that's an even more powerful story as you just shared that. And it's going to lead us as we're going to take a short break and come back. But I want to talk about 2 initiatives that are close to your heart, because you've tasted the bitter water. You've tasted the pain, and you've seen the other extremes and how God has brought you through. We want to hear about that. We're listening today, we're talking today with JT Harding, and regardless of whether he can do the splits or not or wear a leopard suit, I am just glad that he's here. And JT, stay with us, and to our listeners, stay with us. We'll be right back.
Woo!
Well, welcome back, everybody, and we're here talking to JT Harding, and he's so full of energy. And JT, let me just jump right in, man. I gotta ask you, you're a storyteller, you're a songwriter. How much of your personal story influences the songs that you write?
That's a great question, Mitch. I write songs the only way I know how, and I just fill them up with personal details of my life. So I wrote a #1 song for Kenny Chesney, thank you, called Somewhere With You. And people always say how descriptive it is. And I just described what I was going through. We were on a carnival ride. It was a Saturday night. You made fun of me for singing the song that I liked. So I just loaded up with personal details. The song Sangria that I wrote for Blake Shelton, I'm not a big drinker, believe it or not, but I would see the word sangria on menus in New York City and Little Italy. And I thought, what a cool word. So I kind of found out what sangria was. So I would say it's all, pretty personal. Mike, is that you enjoying a candy bar over there? Yeah.
He's snacking.
So, JT, I want to ask you this question. You've got a couple initiatives that are so close to your heart. And
Yes.
Why don't you talk to us about those? I'll let you introduce them.
Great. So I've never learned to talk about this, but thankfully when I wrote the book, I brought it up because it is important. I had a brother who took his own life. He was in 8th grade. I was in 6th grade, and there's no explaining it. It's just one of the mysteries of life. And I thought I've learned that something that I've been self-conscious about, maybe embarrassed about. I don't know why I would feel that way, but that's how I've always felt about it. But I've learned that talking about it, so many people relate to it. This thing that I didn't want to share with anyone is something that so many people want to share. So I talk about that in my book. I don't have the answers, but it is something we need to talk about, because if you can help someone, anyone, anywhere, just maybe not get stuck in that little moment, that might change.
When somebody takes their life, it is often incredibly difficult for family members to be able to process things and even to find closure. Maybe you could just talk about that for a minute. How did you find closure, especially when you're so young and your brother was young?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever found closure, but I don't mind saying I went to a therapist once. I felt really bad that I wasn't more there for my mom. I mean, I was in the house a lot, but I remember how sad she was. But someone told me, well, you were a kid, that wasn't your job. And my mother had incredible faith, and she leaned into the Bible and going to church. And my dad, my other brother, Lance, who in the book goes by his Native American name, Dances with Budweiser. My dad and Lance and my mom, we just stuck together. I said, like, we made like a shield against the world. Not that we were against the world. We just stuck together, and that made all the difference. We just realized how lucky we were to have each other. And my mom had spoke at suicide prevention things all over Michigan, all over the country. And I know she saved a lot of lives. So that inspired me.
That's powerful. There's something else that's close to your heart, and that is National Adoption Month. What's that all about? Tell us about that.
I was adopted at birth, and I wouldn't change it for the world. As I said earlier, my parents were into sports, and they just encouraged me. My dad would say, you can do whatever you want with your life, just do it your best. And so this last month I had a songwriting contest. It's already ended, but I just said, tell me your adoption story and tell me any kind of music that you like. And I got hundreds of submissions, and we picked someone. We haven't announced it yet, because so many people want to write songs. So as long as they were adopted and they like music, and I just think it's a great thing to talk about, because I think you have to have a lot of courage to adopt somebody, but it's just something that's dear to my heart. And I know so many people that are adopted, and they just are full of joy, and we're just all so lucky. And I'll add to that, when I would come up no in the music business, I would lean into the fact that I was adopted. I won the lottery of life from day one. And I thought, God's looking out for me. So don't get too bummed out on this journey to make it into.
Well, JT, let me ask you, because I'm thinking the challenges that you've gone through with losing a brother to suicide, and I've heard firsthand from different people that being adopted can have its own struggles. But you come on here, the show, and you're high energy, you're funny, you're laughing, you're joking. So could you tell me, has some of the struggles you've gone through influenced your personality, or are they totally separate? Just speak to that.
I'm not sure. You know, when I was in my early 20s, I actually met my biological father, and it's really crazy. He turned out to be an actor. His name is Jay Thomas. He was on Cheers and Murphy Brown, and probably on some terrible Hallmark movies that are playing right now and it's a great story. If you don't know him, look him up. His name is Jay Thomas. So everyone's like, "Oh, you're just like Jay." That's what it is. But I disagree. I think my parents encouraged me to be silly. My parents took me to concerts. My dad took me to Motley Crue. He was asleep the whole concert. That's not a joke. There's explosions.
Wow.
I just think that my parents encouraging me to be myself has made me who I am. And I mean, I don't really have the answers. It's just out there in the universe. But I can't just tell you how lucky I am that I was adopted.
You know, as we think about all the different things that happen to us in life, your life is not mapped out the way that mine is, but we all have stuff we have to navigate. It's like rocks in a river, and the rapids are going all around it, and the canoe's going to get smashed if we don't take the turn. I can't help but think that in the music industry, that it's been a bit of a dog-eat-dog world as well. Whether it's Nashville or some other place, how have you learned to navigate those rapids?
Well, rejection never gets easier. There's a lot of rejection. I wrote a great song this week. I'm like, wait till they hear this. And it's just been crickets. So you just have to, I look back on my past successes. I say my prayers. A new quote that I love, God knows what he's doing. Because every now and then I'll see someone with a hit song. I'm like, how does that guy have a hit song? I'm like, God knows what he's doing. And I love music so much. I just knew I wasn't going to give up. I wish I had a great answer. It was just my calling. If someone said no, I would just borrow a FedEx jacket and go through the back door.
Hey, so JT, let me ask you, you say God knows what he's doing, and I'm thinking about, you've got firsthand a lot of experience in the music industry in Nashville. Just tell me about that. What sort of awareness is there of God and matters of faith in the music industry? Is that something that's publicly talked about, or is that kind of just kept private?
Oh, in Nashville, it's everywhere you go, and it's great. Everyone down there, I've never seen people with so much faith in Nashville, Tennessee. I mean, I say in the book, I moved to LA. I felt like when I got to LA, God picked up America like a bath mat and shook it, and everybody normal hung on, and everybody else landed in Los Angeles, like myself. Everyone wanted to be a star. And I'm sorry to be so judgmental. I can tell people are judgmental just by looking at them. Kidding. But in Nashville, faith is just on everyone's mind, and it's such a nurturing place. We're competitive in Nashville, but we help each other out, and we are all friends. And I mean that. It's just an incredible city. And I started going there, and I said I have to move here. And Detroit is as well. But when I was a kid, I would go to church. I'm just being honest. I'd go to, church on Christmas and Easter, and, my parents would go every Sunday. But, God just picks his time when he says to someone, hey, get here a little closer to me. And it took me a few years to do that.
Well, I'm glad to hear about that. And, one of the things that I believe God has given you is a great sense of humor. Has it always been that way, or has it been something that just keeps growing and developing?
Talking to you, Mike, I'm like, let me get some jokes ready. No, it's always been that way. I've always just been kind of silly and trying to be the class clown, and some people are like, I can't believe you say that. God's watching. And I say to them, God has a sense of humor. Flamingos have backwards knees, people. That's funny, so I've just always, I've never met a camera I didn't like. I think I'm probably, I just love talking to you guys and having fun and being silly. I mean, you have to, isn't that a quote? That's why angels can fly, because they take themselves so lightly, right?
That's a good thing. And that's part of the whole process in my life as well. Just not to take myself quite so seriously, but the things that God's calling me to do, to give my energy, give my heart to it. And I love the word that your dad said to you, whatever you set your mind to, give it all your energy and all your time. And man, I just want to say thank you for coming on the program. It's just been fun.
Absolutely. If you're watching, my book, Party Like a Rockstar, is available everywhere, bookstores, online. And if you're like Mike and you want to take a long romantic walk to the refrigerator with your headphones on, it's also on audio. And hit me up. This is really a great blessing. And I mean it. I love Bryan Adams. I love Shania Twain. I love Corey Hart. So thanks for all the great music through the years, everyone in Canada.
Well, hey, thank you for being with us. Just one last question. Did you actually get that coat from Don Cherry or not? No, I'm just
No, I wish. Oh, he's always got to have the last word, this guy. Gosh,
We'll
darn
go
it.
buy jackets like that. We'll get leopard
we'll
jackets.
get that. JT, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
All right. And I want some syrup for being on here. Send me some.
Love that.
Well, welcome back, everybody. We've just come out of our time. We've been doing these interviews with J.T. Harding, and he was the one who wrote that book, Party Like a Rockstar, you just saw. And Mike,
It was so good.
he was so high energy, and I felt a little silly. I mean, I'm wearing this dress shirt, and I dressed all nice
You look
and sharp.
so boring.
Well, compared to JT, I sure did. I think after the show, I'm going to go out and I'm going to buy a leopard jacket and I can match him. Yeah, he was so high energy. But you know, something I really appreciated about JT, one of the things he shared, just his difficult story growing up in Detroit and some of the challenges he had with, think about adoption, losing his brother to suicide, and all these different challenges.
Those
but
are huge.
they're,
Absolutely.
well, I've never gone through anything like that. But to say that now he's able to look back and say, you know what, God walked with me through it all, and God has guided my steps so that I would get to where I am now. I just think that's incredible.
And I think the interesting thing is we're not all going to be comedians. Like, he is just naturally funny, and he can see the funny side of life. Right. But the reality of it is he's discovered a truth that God was leading him and guiding him. And if I could say something to you today, you know, your story is not J.T. Harding's any more than mine is. But I want you to know that God is leading you and guiding you. In a couple moments, I'm going to be teaching again on the life of Moses. And as we come into Exodus chapter 2 and 3, we see how God is fulfilling his promises, and he is leading Moses even through a difficult time so that he can eventually be the one to lead the nation of Israel. Don't doubt that God is scripting the story of your life. He's asking you to trust him in the midst of it. Just think with me of the statement, the long wait of disappointment. And that really is the story of Moses. He thought that he could lead the nation of Israel, and he did it his own way. We're going to see that a bit today in our teaching. But what happened? He got found out. He discovered that the nation of Israel wasn't ready to follow him. And he felt like the whole nation of Egypt had turned on him, and actually they wanted to annihilate him. So he runs to the wilderness. Fear brands him like a cowboy brands a cow, and it shaped his life. And decisions shape our lives. You know, we talked about the decision Moses' parents made yesterday, how they decided they're going to keep the baby alive when Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, said, we're going to kill all young boys. And they then put him in an ark of bulrushes when he was 3 months old. Risky. Who would put their baby to float in the reeds? But they wanted to keep him alive. But then we see when Moses is older that he makes an impetuous decision. And actually, when we read the story, what happened is that he thought this would really set him up with his Hebrew people. They knew that he had the favored place in the courts of Pharaoh because Pharaoh's daughter had adopted him, and he could do no wrong. He had all the training. Life was on a silver spoon. It was handed to him. And I'm sure that Moses is thinking in the backstory, this is preparing me to be the leader. I'm going to lead the revolution. And he decides in his own time, in his own way, that how he is going to do it. I don't doubt for a moment that those thoughts about being the leader and helping the people get out of slavery was from God. But timing is everything, and waiting for God to give his go-ahead is critical. And we read what happened here in Exodus 2:12. He saw, glancing this way and that, and seeing the Egyptian who was beating the Hebrew, he actually killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. He said he looked this way and he looked that way. And as someone has said that when you have to check if the coast is clear, you probably shouldn't do it. It was a huge mistake that Moses made. There are two stories being told here as we read through the book of Exodus. One is the lower story, and the lower story is seldom the same as the upper story. The lower story is what's happening in your life and mine. It's what was happening in Moses' life and in the lives of his fellow Hebrews. The upper story is how God is working all things together. And a lot of times we get frustrated with the upper story because God's timing is different than ours, and it's seldom the same. You know, when we come to Exodus chapter 2 and 3, remember I said yesterday there has been 400 years between the last page of Genesis and the story of Exodus. And so probably we're in about year 360 because what is happening is Moses is 40 years old. And suddenly he's running for his life and he has to go out into the wilderness. And he's going to spend 40 years in the wilderness. I believe that God knew that that was going to happen, but I don't believe that Moses needed to spend 40 years in the wilderness to learn the lesson. I think he just kind of crossed his arms and he locked down. But my goodness, what he was doing, what a crushing defeat. Do you remember about a week ago, I was talking about some of my own personal experiences and riding on an elevator and hearing the elevator say, are you going up or are you going down? Moses is going down at this point, and his pride has been crushed. He has been rejected. And what happens is that, you see, initially his hopes were growing. He's looking at his background, he's looking at his story, and he's saying, you know, it's just a natural thing that God has created me to be the leader. And it was. He was reading it right. But when he took things into his own hands, God had to teach him that in his arrogance and in his pride, in his strong will, that that's not what God needed. God didn't need that. He needed someone who would surrender. And after 40 years in the wilderness, it's very interesting how Moses is described. He is described as a meek person, the meekest man who ever lived. Meekness is not weakness. It is power under control. And in those 40 years, God had to teach him that, you know what, when you surrender to me, when you let things happen my way, then I can use you. And I hope you'll draw on that today as you ponder your own life, maybe a period of disappointment as you've been waiting, to realize that God still is working out his plan. He's with you. He will never fail you or forsake you.
One of the good things about summertime is that it helps us to find a healthy rhythm. You find yourself going too hard, too fast, maybe in too many directions, trying to please people. Ken Shigematsu's book is going to help you. It's called The Survival Guide for the Soul. Ken's a pastor in Vancouver, British Columbia, and he has written extensively on subjects related to soul care. I want to encourage you to write to us today at The Perspective and get your free copy. The first 20 people that write in this week, we're going to send you a free copy of Ken's book. Would you also consider being a partner here at The Perspective? We need your help as we share God's word across the country, because people are wondering not just how do we care for our soul, but how do we make sure that our soul is right with God? And that's why we have this little book we're giving away all summer, and it's called Just Start. It helps you to get going in your relationship with God. If you've never started your relationship with God today, can I invite you to take that step of faith to say right now a simple prayer with me? Lord Jesus, I'm trusting you as my Savior. I believe you died for me, that you rose from the grave, you defeated the power of sin, and you will be my leader and Lord. And you know, if you're praying that prayer right now, God is hearing your prayer. But write to me at theperspective.tv so I can send you this little book and encourage you in the decision you have made.